we could plant the seeds of our experiences in the soil of our heart, whatever it is we all experience individually, I believe that it is in those experiences that we are able to find God. Hi everyone, Angelo here. I'm a creative and theologian as a 31st Sunday in Ordinary Time. We are in chapter 12 of Mark, and in this story here, we have a scribe coming up to Jesus and asks him what the greatest commandment is. So Jesus responds like, look, you gotta love God plenty. You gotta love God with all you have. And then Jesus goes further and says, and this is the second greatest commandment, you have to love your neighbor as yourself. So then the scribe is like, that is true, what you're saying is right. This is more important than any kind of sacrifice or anything else we could do. And Jesus looking at the scribe and sees how wise he responds, he's like, you are not far from the kingdom of God. So this story, I find, is like a little different from the other stories where Jesus might have an interaction with his religious authorities. So the thing is, sometimes, maybe more often than not, when Jesus has an interaction with his religious authorities, things seem to be tense. But in this case, it seems to be fairly relaxed. And I mentioned before that my theory for, I suppose, what we could call Jesus' lost years, or the years that we don't really know about his life because of we wouldn't have heard about it in the Gospels. My theory is that Jesus would have been working closely with his religious leaders. And that comes from my own experience of working for the Archdiocese of Port of Spain for a little bit before I felt God calling me to move on with my own life. But the thing is, while I was there, I made some good friends and plenty friendly acquaintances. People who I would never look to pass straight, and I would imagine, or at least I would hope, vice versa. And yes, I would have had, people that there was tension and whatnot too. Same way, clearly we know Jesus has tension with some people as well. But the majority of people, that wasn't the case. It's friendly, it's a cool scene. So, same way I would imagine with Jesus, I would like to imagine that as much as he would have had his own tension with his religious authorities, the majority of people, it would be a cool scene with him and them too. So perhaps maybe this is one of these people he's talking to right now. So in this, what I imagine to be relaxed and laid back and friendly scenario, who knows, they're probably talking theology, right? And this scribe asked Jesus what he asked him. He's asking him what is the greatest commandment. And I think too, the way when Christ responded and then the scribe responded back, this is what the kingdom of God is like, where, these are two people here in community, and this is a moment of praising God in it. Even just talking about God is, at least for me, praising God. So this is where I find the story gets interesting, based off of the first question. Because the scribe is asking him about the greatest commandment, and Jesus didn't only answer his question, wasn't just like a direct answer, he also took the conversation further. So this story raises 2 points of importance for me. And the first point is the importance of doing what you love. Because the situation seems cool, right? And as I would have mentioned, it seems like they're talking about theology. And just like with any thoughtful discussion, this sort of dialogue would often happen, which is probably, again, why the scribe would respond in the way that he did. It's an exchange of opinions. It's not like the scribe was asking a question that he didn't already know the answer to or didn't share a similar opinion on. But it seems like they were just having a good time, again, participating in the kingdom of God, this community. They're chilling, they're liming. And they're talking about something they love, and they're taking it deep at that. And I think this is such a joyful thing to do. I'm not saying there won't be moments of seriousness or moments where it have plenty work to do. Of course, there will be. At the same time, even in the things that we do for work, ideally, if you are doing something you love for work. As much as it could get stressful sometimes, maybe plenty times, once you love it, you're not going to walk away. Or, well, hopefully. I mean, some people do genuinely love what they do and still get driven to the point where they have no choice but to walk away. But of course, not everybody can do what they love for a living. I mean, I consider myself super privileged to be able to do two things I love for a living, meaning the creativity and the theology, and to get paid for it on top of that. A lot of people are still trying to figure out what it is they love, or they might be doing whatever it is they can in order to make ends meet. And I mean, of course, there's nothing wrong with that. All good and honest work helps us to know our own human dignity too. And no matter what we're doing in our day-to-day lives, we can find meaning in it, whether or not it is our vocation. But for those of us who get to do what we love, I mean, I don't know. I just think that we are super blessed to be able to experience life like this. And it's such a gift to cherish. So as here, I will use this point to move on to the second point. So in their conversation, the scribe asks Jesus one question. And Jesus gives him two answers. He gives him our first greatest commandment, which we know he says, love God with all your hand, love God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength. That's the first greatest commandment. And then Jesus gives him a second greatest commandment, where he says, love your neighbor as yourself. And from what it seems like, to be able to combine these two teachings, to combine these two commands, this is something that is original to Christ, meaning that it doesn't look like it necessarily existed, say, in the rabbinic tradition before, or that there were other teachers that would have been teaching this, at least in a mainstream scale then. So this thought being original to Jesus, I don't think that he would have been able to bring this out unless he was living his life in a mindful and a thoughtful and a meaningful way. So the second point of importance for me in this story is about living our lives in meaningful ways. And of course, I mean, it is something different for everybody, and only you can figure out what living your life in a meaningful way means for you. But we all have the same 24 hours in the day, and we all experience whatever we experience. Of course, it's different for everybody, right? I can't imagine what somebody else's life is like. I can't imagine what their experiences are like. But regardless, whatever it is we all experience individually, I believe that it is in those experiences that we are able to find God. And I mean, I do say this with a bit of hesitation, I'm not gonna lie, because I know I am talking from a place of relative peace, meaning that my context is, well, this lovely twin nation of Trinidad and Tobago. And I mean, we have our problems, for sure. At the same time, I feel like life's so nice here. Or at least I imagine it is, versus living in an experience of a place constantly going through like war, like for example the horrors taking place in Gaza at the moment. And I mean, I will be the first one to critique our politicians, but as of right now, I just don't feel like I have to worry about a dictator dropping bombs on my house or on my family or on hospitals or on UN workers or on whoever else. And I mean, there's so much war and disaster all over the world. And I hope that, well, in addition to prayer, we are able to find means to help. And I do hope that our prayer helps us to find other means to help. However we can, whatever, even if we consider it small. I mean, none of it is small. Everything is meaningful. Every bit of help matters. But to be able to help requires us to use our creativity. And I think that's what Jesus displays here in this story by answering the scribe's question. So it's like Jesus is living his life in a meaningful way. And he engages with that. He engages with his experiences. And he brings it all together. He integrates it. and then he expresses it in a way that only he can. This is like how he plants the seeds of his experiences in his heart, and the fruits that come from his contemplation, he then shares with everyone whom he encounters. So the same way too, for each of us, we could plant the seeds of our experiences in the soil of our heart. And we can tend it, we can nurture it, we can take care of it. And whatever fruits those bring forward through our creativity, we are then able to bring that forward in creative ways for the good of our communities and by extension the world too. And those fruits could only come forward with our own God-given creativity. And it could only be expressed in ways that we as individuals can express it. Nobody else could do it for us, and nobody else is going to do it in the same way that we could do it. Of course, it is God expressing God's self through all of us. So, once we can, let's do the things that we love. And let's plant the seeds of our experiences in the soil of our hearts. And let's see what fruit God brings out in the process. And I mean, it requires our yes, but I do think we are capable of that. Anyways, that's it from me. And as always, I appreciate you so much for watching. Thank you.